The communication array on Europa Station had been silent for 3 months. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the observation deck, watching Jupiter's great red spot churn in the distance. As the lead xenobiologist for humanity's Deep Space Monitoring Network, she had spent 15 years listening to the cosmic silence, hoping for just one signal that would prove Earth wasn't alone. Today, that silence would end forever. "Dr. Vasquez, you need to see this immediately." The voice of her assistant, Marcus Chen, crackled through the intercom with an urgency that made Elena's heart race. She pushed off from the wall and floated through the zero-gravity corridors toward the communications center, her mind already racing through possibilities. The main lab was buzzing with activity. Every screen displayed waves of data, and the normally quiet space hummed with excited voices. Marcus met her at the entrance, his face pale, but his eyes bright with wonder. "It started 20 minutes ago," he said, guiding her to the primary console. "The signal is definitely artificial. The mathematical patterns are too complex to be natural phenomena." Elena stared at the cascading data streams. The signal was unlike anything in their databases. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost musical, yet underneath lay layers of information so dense that their most advanced computers were struggling to process it all. "Have you attempted any response protocols?" Elena asked, her scientific training warring with the urge to immediately broadcast humanity's existence to whoever was out there. "No, ma'am. We're following first contact procedures. Nothing goes out without your authorization and approval from Earth Command." Elena nodded, grateful for her team's discipline. The signal continued to pour in, growing stronger by the minute. Whatever was sending it was either incredibly powerful or getting closer. Neither possibility was particularly comforting. "Where's it coming from?" Marcus pointed to the star chart display. A red dot pulsed in the Kepler 438 system, roughly 500 light-years from Earth. "The signal is focused directly at our solar system. This isn't a general broadcast, Dr. Vasquez. Someone is trying to talk specifically to us." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Humanity had been broadcasting radio signals into space for over a century. Television shows, radio programs, military communications, and scientific data had been rippling outward from Earth in an ever-expanding sphere. If someone 500 light-years away was responding to those signals, they possessed technology that defied human understanding of physics. "Run a full analysis," Elena ordered. "I want to know everything about this signal before we even think about responding, and get me a direct line to Earth Command." Over the next 6 hours, the signal evolved. What began as simple mathematical sequences grew into complex geometric patterns, then into what appeared to be star charts showing the local galactic region. The senders were demonstrating their knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and their awareness of human civilization's location. Elena found herself pacing the observation deck again as her team worked. Through the transparent aluminum viewing port, she could see Earth, a tiny blue dot barely visible against the black of space. Everything humanity had ever known, every person who had ever lived, existed on that small world. And now, something vast and unknown was reaching across the void to make contact. The breakthrough came when Dr. Sarah Kim, their linguistics specialist, discovered the key to the signal's structure. "It's using prime numbers as a base language," she announced excitedly. "But look at this section here. These aren't just random mathematical concepts, they're using our own mathematical constants. Pi, the golden ratio, Planck's constant. They've been studying our broadcasts for a long time." Elena studied the decoded segments. The aliens, whoever they were, had learned human mathematics and were using it to build a bridge of understanding. It was elegant, logical, and slightly terrifying in its implications. "Dr. Vasquez," Marcus called from his station. We're receiving what looks like a new type of signal. The computer is classifying it as some kind of visual data. The main screen shifted to display a slowly forming image. At first, it appeared to be random pixels, but gradually, a picture emerged. It showed the solar system from an external perspective, with every planet in perfect detail and proportion. The image was so accurate it could only have been taken by something actually observing their system from outside. Elena's blood turned cold. When was this image taken? Marcus ran the orbital mechanics calculations. Based on the planetary positions, this was captured approximately 18 hours ago. The room fell silent. Whatever had sent the signal wasn't just 500 light-years away. Something was here, in their solar system right now. "Emergency protocols," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Alert Earth Command immediately. Initiate deep system scans. I want to know where that observation point is located." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Earth's most powerful telescopes turned toward the outer solar system, scanning for any sign of the visitors. Deep space monitoring stations across the system reported similar signals, all originating from beyond the Kuiper Belt. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the signal changed again. This time, the message was unmistakably clear. Coordinates. Specific location data pointing to a region of empty space roughly 40 astronomical units from the sun. "They want to meet," Elena whispered, staring at the data. Commander Janet Rodriguez, Earth Command's representative, appeared on the main communications screen. Her weathered face was grim. "Dr. Vasquez, we need options. The President is asking for recommendations, and frankly, we're in completely uncharted territory." Elena looked around at her team. Each face reflected the same mixture of wonder and terror she felt. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries, but now that it was here, the weight of responsibility was crushing. "Commander, they've demonstrated capabilities far beyond ours. They found us across interstellar distances. They've studied our civilization. And they've traveled here using technology we can't even theorize about. If they meant us harm, they wouldn't need to announce their presence." "Unless they're following some kind of protocol," Rodriguez replied. "Maybe they give civilizations a chance to surrender before they attack. Or maybe they're genuinely trying to communicate," Elena countered. "Look at how they've approached this. Mathematical concepts, visual confirmation, specific coordinates. They're being methodical, almost careful." The debate continued for another hour, but eventually the decision was made. Humanity would respond. A simple mathematical acknowledgement would be transmitted to the coordinates they had provided, followed by basic information about human civilization. Elena personally oversaw the transmission. The message was brief: confirmation that the signal had been received, basic mathematical principles to establish communication baseline, and a simple representation of Earth and its inhabitants. It was humanity's first deliberate message to an alien intelligence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The alien signal exploded across every frequency simultaneously, flooding communication networks across the solar system. But this wasn't random noise. As the computers processed the incoming data, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The message contained detailed star charts of the local galactic region. System after system was marked with symbols that needed no translation. They showed the progression of the aliens' expansion across space, the systematic consumption of resources from hundreds of worlds, and the elimination of dozens of civilizations. But it was the final image that made Elena's hands shake. It showed a three-dimensional map of nearby star systems, with Earth's solar system at the center. Surrounding systems were marked in red, showing a sphere of controlled space nearly 100 light-years in diameter. At the edge of this sphere, entire star clusters were marked with a different symbol. Dr. Kim's voice was barely a whisper. "I think they're showing us what they've destroyed." The implication was clear and terrible. Humanity had just announced its presence to a civilization that had consumed entire regions of the galaxy. And now they were responding not with welcome, but with what appeared to be an ultimatum. Elena stared at the star charts, her mind racing through the possibilities. The aliens had traveled 500 light years to reach Earth. They commanded technology that could cross interstellar space in mere hours or days. They had systematically conquered or destroyed every civilization they had encountered, and humanity had just invited them to visit. "Commander Rodriguez," Elena called through the communication link, "you need to mobilize every resource we have. This isn't a friendly first contact. This is a negotiation for survival." The screens around her continued to display the alien star charts. Each marked system represented the death of a civilization, the end of countless lives and dreams. Humanity was surrounded by a sphere of darkness that had consumed everything in its path, and now that darkness was coming for Earth. Elena looked out at the tiny blue dot of her homeworld and wondered if humanity's first contact with alien life would also be its last. The signal continued to stream in, carrying more data, more star charts, more evidence of the vast and terrible intelligence that was even now approaching the solar system. In the distance, Jupiter continued its eternal dance around the sun, unaware that everything was about to change. Elena pressed her hand against the viewing port and tried to prepare herself for whatever was coming. Humanity had reached out across the void and touched something that had been waiting in the darkness. Now, they would have to face the consequences of that contact. The communication array continued to receive data, each new transmission adding another piece to the puzzle of humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. And with each new piece, it became clearer that this encounter would demand far more from humanity than anyone had ever imagined. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Europa Station, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance, and realized that she was witnessing the end of humanity's childhood. Whatever happened next would determine whether the species would grow into something greater, or simply become another entry in an alien database of conquered worlds. The signals kept coming, and with them, the countdown to humanity's greatest test began. Admiral James Morrison had seen warfare on 3 different continents and commanded fleets through the most dangerous regions of Earth's oceans. But nothing in his 40-year military career had prepared him for the emergency session now taking place in the Pentagon's deepest bunker. Representatives from every major nation sat around the table, their faces reflecting the same mixture of fear and determination that Morrison felt in his chest. President Chen leaned forward, her fingers interlocked on the table's surface. "Let's review what we know, Dr. Vasquez. No speculation, just facts." Elena's holographic projection flickered slightly as the transmission reached Earth from Europa Station. "The signals have been continuous for 8 hours. We've identified 3 distinct types of communication. First, the star charts showing approximately 300 conquered or destroyed civilizations within a 100 light-year radius of Earth. Second, what appears to be technical specifications for weapons and spacecraft far beyond our current capabilities. Third, and most concerning, a countdown. "Countdown to what?" asked Director Liu of the Chinese Space Agency. "We don't know. The numbers are decreasing in what appears to be a base 12 mathematical system. If our calculations are correct, it reaches 0 in approximately 72 hours. Admiral Morrison studied the translated alien messages displayed on the screens around the room. The technical specifications were the most troubling. The alien vessels appeared to harness energy from stars themselves, could travel between solar systems in days rather than years, and possessed weapons that could crack planets like eggs. "What about defensive options?" Morrison asked. General Patricia Hayes from the Joint Chiefs answered grimly. "We've run every scenario through our war simulation computers. Our entire nuclear arsenal wouldn't even scratch the surface of what they've shown us. These aren't ships, Admiral. They're mobile civilizations." President Chen turned to Dr. Rachel Foster, humanity's leading theoretical physicist. Dr. Foster, is there any possibility we're misinterpreting their intentions? Foster shook her head slowly. The mathematical models are clear. They're showing us the systematic destruction of every technological civilization they've encountered. The pattern is identical in each case. First contact, a brief exchange of information, then complete elimination of the target species. Unless, Elena's voice cut through the despair. We're missing something crucial about their methodology. Morrison looked up at Elena's projection. Explain. I've been analyzing the star charts more carefully. The civilizations they've destroyed fall into specific categories. Most were roughly equivalent to our current technological level when first contact occurred. But look at this data. The main screen shifted to show a detailed analysis of the conquered systems. Elena highlighted specific entries. Here, here, and here. 3 civilizations that survived initial contact for extended periods. Decades in some cases. They weren't immediately destroyed. What made them different? President Chen asked. I don't know yet, but there's a pattern. These civilizations had something the others didn't, something that bought them time. Morrison felt a spark of hope, but tempered it with military pragmatism. Time for what? Were they eventually destroyed anyway? Elena hesitated. The data suggests they were relocated. Not destroyed, but moved. The energy signatures indicate massive population transfers, entire civilizations lifted from their homeworlds and transported elsewhere. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General Hayes spoke first. They're not just conquerors, they're collectors. Dr. Foster leaned forward excitedly. That changes everything. If they're preserving certain civilizations, there must be criteria that determine survival versus destruction. Morrison's military mind immediately began working through the tactical implications. Dr. Vasquez, do we have any information about what these survivor civilizations had in common? I'm still analyzing the data, but there are some preliminary patterns. Advanced mathematics beyond what we currently possess, unique scientific discoveries, or... Elena paused, checking her readings. Admiral, we're receiving a new transmission. This one is different. The screens around the bunker flickered and then displayed a new image. It showed Earth from space, but with incredible detail. Cities were clearly visible, ocean currents mapped to the smallest eddies, weather patterns tracked with mathematical precision. But most disturbing of all, the image showed the locations of every human settlement, every military installation, every space station. They've been watching us for some time, Morrison observed grimly. The image shifted, zooming in to show individual buildings, people moving through streets, ships in harbors. The detail was impossible, as if the aliens possessed sensors that could peer through walls and analyze every aspect of human civilization. Then came the text. Dr. Kim's voice reached them from Europa Station. The message is in perfect English. They've been studying our languages as well as our technology. The words appeared on the screen in simple, clear letters. Greetings, humans of Earth. We are the assembly of ascended minds. Your species has been evaluated for integration or elimination. You have demonstrated mathematical capability and technological progress. You will be tested. President Chen's face had gone pale. Tested how? The message continued. One among you will be chosen to represent your species. This individual will be transported to our primary vessel for evaluation. The test will determine your species' fate. You have 60 hours to select your representative. Admiral Morrison stood slowly, his mind already working through the implications. It's not random. They want us to choose. The decision itself is part of the test. How do we know they'll honor any agreement? General Hayes demanded. Elena's voice came through clearly. Because they've done this before. The civilizations that survived, the ones that were relocated rather than destroyed, they all went through the same process. One representative, one test. Dr. Foster was studying the technical data streaming in alongside the message. "Admiral, look at this. They're providing us with detailed specifications for a transportation device. Instructions for building a one-way communication platform." Morrison examined the blueprints appearing on his screen. The technology was far beyond human capability, but the instructions were precise and clear. They want us to build our own method of getting someone to their ship. It's another test, President Chen realized. Can we build something we've never seen before, using principles we don't fully understand? The next 12 hours became a whirlwind of activity. Teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock to decode the alien instructions. The device they described required technology from every major space program on Earth, cooperation between nations that had been enemies for generations, and a level of precision that pushed human manufacturing capabilities to their absolute limits. Meanwhile, the debate raged over who would serve as humanity's representative. Military leaders argued for a soldier, diplomats pushed for an experienced negotiator, and scientists insisted that only someone who understood the technology could possibly succeed. Elena found herself at the center of the discussion. Her experience with the alien signals, her expertise in xenobiology, and her role in establishing first contact made her an obvious choice. But Morrison had serious reservations. "Dr. Vasquez, with all respect to your scientific credentials, we don't know what kind of test they're planning. This could require physical capabilities, tactical thinking, or skills we haven't even considered." Elena's response came through the communication link with quiet determination. "Admiral, I've been studying these beings for 8 hours straight. I've analyzed their patterns, their methodology, their approach to other civilizations. If anyone understands what we're dealing with, it's me." President Chen made the decision. "Dr. Vasquez will be our representative, but she won't go alone." Morrison looked up sharply. "Ma'am?" The aliens specified one representative, but they didn't specify that person couldn't carry information from others. "Dr. Vasquez will have direct communication links to our best minds in every field. She'll carry the collective knowledge and judgment of humanity." The construction of the alien transportation device proceeded with unprecedented international cooperation. Russian rocket technology combined with American electronics, Chinese manufacturing precision merged with European scientific instruments, and Indian computational systems integrated with Japanese materials science. For the first time in human history, the entire species worked toward a single goal. Elena prepared for her mission by studying every piece of data they had gathered about the aliens. The assembly of ascended minds had conquered hundreds of civilizations, but they had also preserved dozens of others. The key seemed to be demonstrating something unique, some quality that made a species worth preserving rather than eliminating. "What do you think they're looking for?" Elena asked Morrison during one of their final planning sessions. Morrison considered the question carefully. Based on their behavior, they're not just collecting resources or territory. They're collecting something else. Intelligence, maybe. Unique perspectives. They've shown the ability to destroy civilizations easily, but they go to considerable effort to test some of them first. So, survival depends on proving we have something they can't get anywhere else. Exactly. The question is, what do humans have that 300 other civilizations didn't? Elena stared out at Earth, visible through the observation deck's viewing port. Humanity had spread across the planet in an incredible diversity of cultures, languages, ideas, and dreams. They had produced art and music, scientific discoveries, and philosophical insights. They had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters, always adapting, always growing. But what made them unique in a galaxy full of intelligent life? The answer would have to emerge during her test. Elena could only hope that when the moment came, she would recognize it and have the wisdom to present it effectively. With 24 hours remaining until the transportation device would activate, Elena recorded final messages for her family and colleagues. She had volunteered to represent not just humanity's scientific knowledge, but their hopes, dreams, and will to survive. The alien countdown continued, each decreasing number bringing humanity closer to its moment of judgment. Elena prepared herself for a test that would determine whether Earth's children would join the ranks of the preserved civilizations or become another cautionary entry in the Assembly's vast database of conquered worlds. Admiral Morrison watched the final preparations and tried not to think about the hundreds of civilizations that had failed this same test. Elena Vasquez was brilliant, dedicated, and brave, but she was still just one human being facing an intelligence that had mastered a significant portion of the galaxy. The fate of humanity now rested in her hands, and in whatever unique quality the human species possessed that might convince an alien intelligence to spare them. The countdown reached 18 hours and continued its relentless descent toward zero. One contact with Earth demanded the forfeit of an entire star cluster. Elena Vasquez stood on the platform humanity had built according to alien specifications, her heart hammering against her ribs as the device hummed to life around her. The transportation field generated a sound like singing crystals, and reality began to bend at the edges of her vision. Through her communication link, she could hear Admiral Morrison's voice counting down the final seconds. "Dr. Vasquez, remember that you carry all of humanity with you. Whatever they ask, whatever they show you, you represent the best of our species." "Understood, Admiral. If this goes wrong—" "It won't," Morrison interrupted firmly. "You're going to show them what makes us worth saving." The world dissolved into light. Elena's consciousness snapped back into focus, aboard what could only be described as a city-sized spacecraft. The chamber around her stretched beyond visual limits, its walls covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air tasted of ozone and something indefinably alien, but it was breathable. "Welcome, Elena Vasquez of Earth." The voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through the chamber without any visible source. Elena turned slowly, trying to locate the speaker, but saw only the vast, empty space around her. "I am here to represent humanity," she said clearly, her voice echoing in the enormous chamber. "Yes, you are the chosen representative of species designation human, originating from the third planet of star system Sol. You have been brought here for evaluation." Elena tried to project confidence, despite the overwhelming nature of her surroundings. "What is the nature of this evaluation?" The chamber began to change around her. The walls flowed like liquid metal, forming a smaller space that felt more manageable. As the transformation completed, Elena found herself standing in what appeared to be a perfect recreation of a university lecture hall. "Interesting," the voice observed. "You find comfort in places of learning. This is noted." A figure materialized in front of Elena. It was vaguely humanoid but clearly artificial, its features shifting between different alien anatomies as if it couldn't decide on a single form. "I am the evaluator for this sector of the galaxy. I have tested 417 species over the past 3 million years. Of these, 93 have been preserved and integrated into the assembly. The remainder were eliminated as incompatible with galactic stability." Elena forced herself to remain calm despite the casual mention of genocide on an unimaginable scale. "What determines compatibility?" The evaluator's form stabilized into something resembling a tall, thin human with silver skin and completely black eyes. "Each species must demonstrate unique value that cannot be found elsewhere in the galaxy. Redundant civilizations represent inefficient resource allocation. So you preserve diversity, not just intelligence." "Correct. Intelligence alone is common. Creativity, unique perspective, novel approaches to universal problems. These are rare. Elena's scientific mind immediately began analyzing the situation. This wasn't just a test of humanity's capabilities, but an evaluation of what they could contribute to the galaxy that no other species could. What was the test for the other species you've evaluated? Each test is unique, designed to reveal the essential nature of the species in question. Your test, Elena Vasquez, begins now. The lecture hall vanished, replaced by something that took Elena's breath away. She stood in a vast chamber filled with floating displays, each one showing a different star system. But these weren't just images. They were alive, dynamic representations of entire civilizations. These are the 93 species we have preserved, the evaluator explained. Each contributed something irreplaceable to the assembly's collective knowledge. Elena moved between the displays, fascinated despite her circumstances. One showed beings of pure energy dancing between the magnetic fields of a gas giant. Another depicted creatures that lived in the event horizon of black holes, harvesting power from the boundary between existence and void. Your species claims to value diversity, the evaluator continued. You have multiple variations within your own population, different cultures, different approaches to the same problems. But so did most of the species we evaluated. This alone is not sufficient. Then what is? That is what you must discover. You have access to the collective knowledge of the assembly through these displays. Study them. Learn what makes each species unique. Then demonstrate what makes humanity irreplaceable. Elena approached the nearest display, representing a species called the Harmonists. As her hand neared the interface, information flooded her mind directly. The Harmonists were mathematical geniuses who had discovered ways to predict quantum events with perfect accuracy. They contributed computational power that allowed the assembly to model the future of entire galaxies. The next display showed the Synthesis, beings who had learned to directly manipulate atomic structures with their thoughts. They built impossible materials and maintained the physical infrastructure of the assembly's vast ships. Each species had mastered something unique, developed capabilities that no other civilization had achieved. Elena moved through dozens of displays, her mind reeling with the incredible diversity of intelligence and achievement represented here. But a pattern began to emerge. Each preserved species had focused intensely on a single aspect of existence, pushing that one capability far beyond what any other species had achieved. The Harmonists were pure mathematics. The Synthesis were masters of matter. The Dreamweavers could manipulate consciousness itself. They were all specialists, refined and perfected in their specific domains. Elena stopped moving and stared at the displays around her. You preserve specialists. Each species you've saved has one unique ability pushed to its absolute limit. Correct. Efficient specialization is the foundation of the assembly's success. But what about generalists? Species that are good at many things rather than perfect at one thing? The evaluator's form shifted, becoming taller and more angular. Generalists are inefficient. A species that is moderately capable in many areas cannot compete with specialists who have achieved perfection in their chosen domain. Elena felt a chill of understanding. Humanity was the ultimate generalist species. They had explored every field of knowledge, developed capabilities across a vast range of disciplines, but had never achieved the focused perfection that characterized the assembly's preserved species. So humanity fails the test because we're too diverse, too unfocused. That determination has not yet been made. You still have the opportunity to demonstrate your species' unique value. Elena's mind raced. How could she prove that generalization was superior to specialization? The evidence around her suggested the opposite. Every preserved species had succeeded by achieving unmatched expertise in a single area. Then she noticed something the evaluator hadn't mentioned. How do these different species work together? She asked. Each contributes their specialized knowledge to assembly projects. The harmonists calculate, the synthesis build, the dream weavers maintain mental stability across diverse populations. But how do they communicate? How do they understand each other's work well enough to coordinate? The evaluator paused. Coordination is managed through intermediary systems that translate between specialized knowledge domains. Artificial systems? Yes. Elena felt excitement building. What happens when those systems fail? When you encounter a problem that requires understanding across multiple specializations simultaneously? The silence that followed told Elena she had identified something important. "Show me your greatest failure," she demanded. "Show me a problem the assembly couldn't solve." The chamber around them changed, displaying a massive star chart. At its center was a cluster of stars surrounded by what appeared to be a growing void. "The entropy cascade," the evaluator said quietly. "A region of space where the fundamental forces of physics are becoming unstable. We have lost 3 entire star clusters to this phenomenon. Our specialists cannot determine its cause because it affects every domain simultaneously: matter, energy, consciousness, and mathematics." Elena studied the display, her mind working through the implications. "Your specialists are so focused on their individual domains that they can't see the connections between them. The harmonists calculate that it is a mathematical anomaly. The synthesis believe it is a matter-based phenomenon. The dreamweavers insist it is a consciousness-related event. None can integrate the other's perspectives, because they've sacrificed broad understanding for deep specialization." Elena approached the star chart display, her hands moving instinctively to manipulate the data. Years of scientific training kicked in as she began correlating information across multiple domains. "This isn't one phenomenon," she said excitedly. "It's 4 separate effects that are cascading through each other. Look, the mathematical instability is triggered by exotic matter reactions, which are influenced by consciousness fields, which create feedback loops in the quantum calculations." The evaluator moved closer. "Explain." "Each of your specialists is seeing one piece of a larger puzzle. The harmonists see the math, the synthesis see the matter effects, the dreamweavers see the consciousness component, but the cascade happens because these aren't separate systems. They're all aspects of the same underlying reality." Elena's hands flew across the display, pulling data from different specialized domains and weaving them together. Her human brain, trained in multiple disciplines, began to see patterns that the hyper-specialized alien minds had missed. "The solution requires simultaneous intervention across all domains," she continued. "Mathematical corrections to stabilize the quantum fluctuations, matter-energy redirections to break the cascade cycle, consciousness fields to dampen the feedback effects. No single specialist can do it, but someone who understands all the domains? Someone like a human. Someone like a generalist species that never gave up the ability to see the big picture." The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of energy that permeated the massive ship. Elena watched the evaluator's artificial form shift through multiple configurations as it processed her demonstration. "You propose that your species' lack of specialized perfection is actually a unique advantage." "Yes. Every other species you've encountered either lacked the intelligence to develop multiple capabilities or abandoned generalization in favor of specialization. Humans are possibly the only species that maintained broad competency across all domains while still advancing technologically. This would make humans valuable as coordinators, translators between specialist knowledge domains." "More than that," Elena pressed. "We would be the problem solvers for challenges that cross domain boundaries, the ones who can see solutions that require understanding multiple specialized fields simultaneously." The evaluator was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a different tone. "The entropy cascade has consumed 3 star clusters. Billions of preserved beings have been lost. If your approach could solve this problem, it could save entire civilizations. Indeed, this would represent unique value. Elena felt hope building, but the evaluator's next words stopped her cold. However, there is a complication. Your demonstration requires actual implementation to prove its validity. You would need to travel to the Cascade region and attempt your proposed solution. How long would that take? Approximately 4 years of travel each way. During this time, your homeworld would remain unprotected. If your solution fails, both humanity and the resources committed to the mission would be lost. Elena understood immediately. The test wasn't just about proving humanity's value, it was about proving their commitment to that value. They would have to risk everything, including Earth itself, to demonstrate that their generalist approach could solve the Assembly's greatest challenge. If we succeed in stopping the entropy cascade, humanity is preserved. If you succeed, humanity becomes the first species granted full Assembly membership as equals rather than preserved specimens. You would serve as coordinators and cross-domain problem solvers for all Assembly operations. The implications were staggering. Humanity wouldn't just survive. They would become the mediators and problem solvers for an entire galactic civilization. But if we fail, Earth is left defenseless while our best minds are lost in the cascade. Correct. This is the nature of your test, Elena Vasquez. Will your species risk everything to prove their unique value to the galaxy? Elena closed her eyes and thought about Admiral Morrison, President Chen, and the billions of people on Earth who were counting on her decision. They had sent her here to save humanity, but the price of salvation was potentially humanity itself. She opened her eyes and looked directly at the evaluator. We'll do it. Humanity accepts the test. The chamber began to change again, preparing for her return to Earth. But Elena had one more question. Why offer this chance at all? Why not just eliminate us like the others? The evaluator's form shifted one final time, becoming almost human in appearance. Because the entropy cascade is not the only cross-domain problem we face. If your species can truly serve as bridges between specialized knowledge domains, you may be the key to challenges we have not yet encountered. The galaxy is vast, Elena Vasquez. Even the Assembly does not know what awaits us in the unexplored regions. As the transportation field began to activate, Elena smiled grimly. Humanity was being offered the chance to save not just themselves, but potentially the entire galactic community. The generalist nature that had seemed like a weakness was actually their greatest strength. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential reward. Humanity would bet their existence on their ability to solve problems that stumped the galaxy's greatest specialists. Elena Vasquez, representative of Earth, vanished in a flash of light, carrying with her the terms of humanity's ultimate test. The fate of Earth now depended on whether human generalists could succeed where alien specialists had failed. The entropy cascade awaited, and with it, the future of both humanity and the assembly of ascended minds.